Guys, welcome back. I am with Coach Michael Bann again today, and a lot of people ask us how Michael does his thing. And so what we wanted to do today was to walk through essentially a case study of one of Michael's clients. I'll let him tell the whole story because he knows what's going on, so that you can get a much better idea of just how careful and how caring Michael must be with each of his clients. So, Michael, can you walk us through who is the client that you're going to tell us about today? And obviously, we're not going to name names, but
Yeah, I ain't no snitch. Yeah, so he's one of my SF operators. So
Special
SF
Forces.
Special Forces, yeah. So I work with quite a few of them, and I can just think of one right now that we had to dig deep into the weeds to pull them out, because sometimes that lifestyle is not the healthiest to prepare for selection, and then if you're selected, to make it through the Q course, and then obviously to be at your team. Sometimes it's just not the healthiest lifestyle.
so that I'm clear, he was in the military for how long prior to seeking you out?
Enough for at least one deployment.
Okay, gotcha.
If I say any more than that, I think some people might know who I'm referring to. And
Oh, gotcha.
I don't want to risk any
Okay,
more
I
than
apologize
that.
for
No,
that.
you're good, you're good.
And so he's in the military for a little bit. He comes to you for preparation to become a Special Forces officer.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Well, not officer, just operator.
Operator,
Yeah.
okay. And so what did you see and what did you hear from him that led you to make some of the coaching decisions that you made?
Yeah, well, conversation, just asking him simple things, right? Like, well, how's your sleep? Do you wake up in the middle of the night? How do you fall asleep easily? So, hearing people say like, yeah, I fall asleep all right, but then I wake up every night at like 1 a.m., but then I fall back asleep, but I always have to pee at 1 a.m. And then it takes me a couple minutes to wake up. I'm a little groggy, but it's not that bad. After about 10 minutes, I'm kind of ready to rock. Usually need about 2 cups of coffee in the morning to keep my day going. And then around like 2 p.m., I kind of need like an energy drink, or I got to take a dip, throw a dip in, and then I kind of wake up again, and then I go home. So hearing things like that, it's already telling me like, all right, like this guy's not sleeping very well. So let's break it down to the principles, 5 things that I have to manage as a strength coach beyond just fitness, is I have to manage glucose tolerance, gut health, oxygen delivery capacity, circadian biology, and the tertiary or last one is hormones. I don't manage hormones, but I have to be very aware of them. Then on
And
top,
a doctor would be the one who manages hormones.
yeah, if they're needed. Oftentimes you don't even need to like replace hormones. Oftentimes if you just get physiology better, hormones get better on their own. So the body's going to rationalize, or not rationalize, the body's going to ration energy, and it's not really going to care a lot about reproduction if it's super stressed out, or if the gut is really messed up, or if you're not sleeping, or whatever, because there's no point in reproducing right now. We got to survive this fight. Who cares about bringing a child into the world? So oftentimes, if you just get the body out of the fight, the hormones kind of come back online on their own. And then on top of that, the actual fitness KPIs, the key performance indicators that tell me, yeah, you've got the green light. I think you're going to be fine in selection for fitness-wise. Obviously, how bad you want it and good decision making and all that stuff. Like if you make some bad decisions, and they probably won't pick you, you know what I mean? But from the fitness side of things, which is where I really always come back to, I look at, rucking, I look at running, I look at some mixed modal tests, I'll look at some rowing tests, I look at the basic strength tests. I try to figure out, like, do we need to prioritize deadlift over back squat? Do we got to prioritize bench press over power clean? Like, what are we doing? So I use a lot of structural balance, actually, just to kind of get an idea of what we might need to prioritize in their strength.
What did you see tangibly that, outside of sleep, etc., that made you say, okay, we're going to need to overcome these challenges? What did you notice in that assessment?
Do you mean with regards to the conversation, or do you mean?
So if you're looking at his fitness KPIs, did you notice that a back squat versus a deadlift was very different? Did you notice that he couldn't ruck, and that sort of sprung a light in your head?
Yeah, I did. So I noticed that one, he's not a giant human, so he's not a large person that can just don 100 pounds and just go for hours. So knowing that, I have to think about, like, what are the pattern itself is rucking. Well, what are the parts of a ruck, right? So we have cardiovascular endurance. So I looked at that and I was like, all right, like his cardio is actually pretty good. He can run a 5 mile pretty good. Like, I'm okay with this 5 mile time. So I don't think he's got a cardiovascular problem. But he might have a pulmonary issue, which means maybe his lungs aren't good. So maybe I got to work on some breathing training. So we can do some CO2 tolerance work, we can do swimming, whatever we need to do to fix respiration. But there's also strength, just the ability to put the pack on. That wasn't really an issue. But muscle endurance, that actually kind of was a big deal. And most of rucking is single leg, right? So do I care about your back squat? I do. Like, I need to know that you can put a decent amount of weight on your spine and then sit down and stand up and recover. So like, I know your body can take a load, but really I need to know what your single leg strength is. Like, do you have good single leg strength? Because every time you take a step, you're balancing on one leg. So do you have a measly 20 pounds per hand for a rear foot elevated split squat? Or can you maybe do 100 pounds per hand, so 200 pounds on one leg? That's kind of one of the things I'll look for.
And what did you find for him in terms of what was costing him in the ruck?
Strength, for sure. Yeah, definitely lower body strength. And then also upper body strength. So overall strength, like, he's more of an endurance athlete. You ask him to go run a marathon, got it, done, talk to you tomorrow. You ask him to do a powerlifting meet, he's like, oh crap, I'm gonna lose. So for him, the weak point was actually the strength. Whereas, you know, a lot of guys, they have rugby backgrounds or football backgrounds or whatever, and they come in like, I'm already pretty powerful. All right, great, you're gonna run 4 times
forever.
this week. So like, you're gonna run till I get tired.
Okay.
So I mean, for him, he needed more strength work. And then also, there was always like slight things that would come up, like small tweaks, like, oh man, I tweaked my back, I tweaked my hip, I tweaked my knee. So it's like always having to readjust the program. And so it was like, nah, that's not right. Like, program is a pretty good program. Something else is going on here. Let's look under the hood. And so ordered blood work on him, dug in, and, you know, thinking about those 5 things, that's the base. Like, if you don't have those 5 things optimized, anybody can stack fitness on it. Like, if you don't have good oxygen delivery, okay, we can probably make you run 5 miles, but at some point you're going to break down. And so if we want to build a massive peak, which is really the end game, you have to have a big base. So the wider the base of the pyramid of fitness, the higher the peak. Well, you know, when he had some glucose tolerance issues, a little bit of gut health stuff, definitely some oxygen delivery issues, it was like, all right, man, this no brainer. We got to fix these things, make your base bigger so I can keep stacking more fitness on it. Because volume is the name of the game. It's not about being able to run a 2-mile time trial in 12:30 and bam, you're done. It's like, all right, can you do that? And then can you do this? And then can you do that? And can you do this? Okay, great. It's been 2 weeks now. You still got a week left. You got to go through team week. Like, can you handle all this? Great. So volume being the name of the game, I got to see how much I can stack on that. If you're sleeping 3 hours a night, or if you wake up twice a night, I can't give you an AM and a PM.
So what did you start to look to do to fix sleep? You know, slight gut health, oxygen delivery. What did you do to help him with that?
So sleep is always about, you know, one, making sure that circadian rhythm is good. And the number one way to treat the pineal gland, which is really where circadian rhythm is lying. So you think about melatonin, everybody knows about that. That's, most of it actually comes from your gut, but in terms of the brain, it comes from the pineal gland. So when you think about the pineal gland, the best way to start doing that, for anyone out there that's struggling, is routine. So one, sleep in a pitch black room. I'm weird, granted. I actually taped aluminum foil to my windows. Not to my window, but to the other side of the blinds. So from outside, you can't tell. But from the inside, there's no light. Like, it's pitch black. Even at 2 p.m., sun trying to shine through the window, my room is pitch black. So sleep in pitch black and sleep in a colder climate. And then when it's a full moon, you know, have a night light. Because during the full moon, generally, we actually should have a little bit more light in our room. So that was the first thing we did, was just, hey man, like, let's get your nighttime routine good to go, right? Now, if you're still waking up at 1 in the morning, we got some other things we got to look at. One of those things was actually glucose tolerance. He had a really hard time managing blood glucose, and so he would have a slight rise of essentially cortisol because he couldn't get blood glucose to come out on its own. So glucagon and growth hormone and other things that are involved in gluconeogenesis just weren't working enough. And he actually had some vitamin deficiencies that caused him to need more cortisol, and it actually kind of woke him up. And so we went in and we kind of took care of those nutrient deficiencies, and sleep was better. And the second sleep was better, it was like game changer for how he recovered. Now we can recover. All right, now we can ruck twice a week, not just once a week. Great, awesome. Now we can ruck 18 miles, not just 12. Great, now we can do a 70-pound kit versus 55-pound kit. So really, by looking at the blood work stuff, glucose tolerance is one of those things we worked on. Oxygen delivery obviously is a huge one, and that's complex, but basically the ability to deliver oxygen, if we have any nutrient deficiencies in certain, like copper, iron, zinc, folate, and B12, that's what we need to make red blood cells. If we're deficient in any of those, we can really struggle to deliver oxygen. And it goes deeper than that, but really what I saw was a mix, which is usually the case, of he just couldn't deliver oxygen, didn't really regulate his blood sugar very well. Some gut health stuff, but everyone in the military is going to have that. You get 17 antibiotics in a shot, whatever. You get the peanut butter shot, as they call it. So you're going to have bad gut health. So yeah, we repaired some of that. And when we did that, his sleep got better, he recovered, and everything kind of got better. And then we could really attack the KPIs, get him stronger, make him more resilient. That's a huge one.
When he went through did you call it the Q course or the Q school?
Q course, so qualification course.
Yep.
So it's basically where they go and actually learn to be a Green Beret. So you have selection, which is kind of like the first phase, and then if you pass selection, you get selected, you go to the Q course. And so basically Q course is where you can learn to be you're either a medic, you're an officer, you're an engineer, weapons, communication, sergeant. So for him, that's where he went to go do his MOS.
How did what did you have to monitor and potentially fix, tweak while he was going through selection followed by Q school? Sorry, Q course.
Yeah, so after selection, you're not exactly fresh. You're kind of beat up. So it's like, hey, if you do it right, honestly, guys that I've had that get selected, that actually pass selection, they really don't need a lot of time to recover. I usually give them a week off, and it's like, hey man, congrats. We're not done yet. We got a lot of work to do. You still have 1.5 years, 2 years left of whatever. So let's go ahead and give you a week off just to kind of chill, go drink a beer, enjoy a good beer, have some pizza, whatever. Back to it next week. So after that, we prepare, and we got to look at the different stages. And so different MOSs have different things. Like if you're an alpha, which is an officer, it's not the same as a Bravo, which is a weapons sergeant. So looking at the different MOSs can tell me hey, you're going to be sitting down more, you're going to have a more sedentary thing more often, whereas you might actually be carrying around machine guns and other weapon systems more often. So every MOS is slightly different in terms of how I might handle it, but they all got to go through SEER, and they all got to go through SUT and these things. So preparing somebody for SEER, there's, aside from what the military does to make them ready, because that's its own thing, but just making sure people have the resiliency. That's what I see is lacking the most with everyone that comes to me, is they just don't have the resiliency built up, but they have the mental resiliency to survive it, which is huge. Sometimes you just got to be more Viking, less racehorse.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, can you explain quickly what SEER is? What do they have to do in
basically where
SEER?
they learn to be a POW, if you want to call it that. I've never been through SEER, obviously, so I don't know authentically what it is, but I've had, 3 dozen, 4 dozen people that I've worked with go through SEER. You basically can get put into a small confined space where they interrogate you or whatever, and I've never really been told all the details. I only know that you don't eat, you don't sleep, you starve, and every single one of my guys, I look at before and after photos, and they're all wicked skinny. They've lost tons of weight. They basically train you.
Resiliency comes in.
And there's the mental resiliency piece, which is, part of the reason why they're selected, I would imagine. But the physical resiliency piece is hey, how long does it take us to recover? Because 8 to 9 times out of 10, when guys get hurt in the tactical community, as long as it's not gunshot wound, IED, helicopter crash, whatever, it's idiopathic. And so Naval Special Warfare, when they put out research a couple years ago, that I actually, wrote a really long 20-something page paper on in grad school, most of those injuries were idiopathic. They had no reason why these guys have pain and can't do their job. And what I found in my research with that was these guys can't do one of those 5 things that we just mentioned. So by optimizing that, guys that I started to work with came back and they're actually, man, compared to my peers, I'm fine. I'm hurting. Yeah, I'm sore. I lost weight, but 7 of my guys over here, they're really hurting. And so it came down to just, you know, you're gonna suck. It's gonna suck. There's nothing fun about it. It's not like you're like, yay, awesome. But they come out of it less torn up. Same thing with selection. Like I know some guys that, you know, they needed more time off, and then one of my most recent guys actually that got selected, and he's almost done with language now. He was like, dude, team week was easy for me. Like I actually didn't have a hard time in selection. Like physically I crushed it, no issues. I didn't even need time off. Whereas some people are like, yeah, I took a week or two off. So to me, it's that resiliency piece on top of the fitness.
So just to kind of round out the story, how is he doing now? Everything going well?
Yeah, everything's great. He's just getting ready for deployment. He's going to do another deployment. And, you know, I think we've been working together for a number of years. But, yeah, he's ready to rock. You know, the big thing is just making sure guys, you know, have good balance, right? Like, you got to be able to make sure that you have the work-life balance just like in any other fitness endeavor. You know, telling somebody that they have to be perfectly gluten-free prior to a deployment is asking for problems.
Yeah.
Because they get over there and then they have to eat something that's not perfectly healthy, and then they, you know, have diarrhea or they have constipation or whatever. So it's just about creating balance, making sure that one, they have the mental acuity to do their job, that they can shoot really well, that they can recover. So there's different phases that I've worked with him, and now the phase really is like, hey man, can you sprint 200 to 400 meters after landing in a helo for an infill? Can you get to the building? Can you talk on 2 different radios and coordinate everything while still shooting and not being winded? And then can you exfil and be good? And so that's kind of where he's at now, is like, how do we get you at the highest level of recovery? I don't really care what your back squat is anymore. I don't care what your bench press is. I do, but like only to an extent.
Really,
yeah, like is your back squat strong enough that I know your hips aren't fragile and that your back's not fragile? Is your bench strong enough so I know your rotator cuff is strong?
Right, so when you jump out of the helicopter,
Yeah, but like I don't need a 405-pound back squat for my guy, right? Unless that's what they want. And I have a lot of guys that want to do CrossFit and compete in the open, and that's great. But we always make sure we manage those 5 things on top of their fitness.
Gotcha. Gosh, I think that says so much about how important looking at the individual is. There's no way that you could just slap a template on top of this, particularly through the different stages, and have it be the same for everybody. So I really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
I know it's just a glimpse into what you do with people, but I know a lot of folks will really appreciate it. So thanks for coming in.
Yeah, if I could say one more thing about that, because you mentioned templates, and the thing that went through my head immediately was, there are a lot of templates out there for training for BUDS or SFAS or whatever, and they talk about their success. Oh, we had 3 more guys graduate. The thing that I always want to know more about, because I like to track my failures. I've had one person so far in my entire career not get selected, and it wasn't a fitness thing. It was something completely related to decisions, and it was just a decision on their part. But from the failure tracking side, I want to know, like they had 3 successful candidates get selected. How many people were following their blog and template that they don't publish?
Exactly.
Kind of like, other like CrossFit templates out there. We got 50,000 people following our template. Great, awesome, but you only had 5 of them actually be successful. So like, what is your success rate? But they're going to market the 5 that are successful.
For sure. Yep.
So that's my only thing, is I see these templates and it just makes me think like, man, there are 40,000 people following this. Like if you look at their Instagram followers, they got 200,000 or whatever. It's like, you got to have at least 30,000 people trying this out. But 30,000 people aren't making it. In fact, like only 3 of the people you guys, marketed. So to me, that actually has like an interesting, when I see that, I think like, man, you have a very low success rate. Not saying that I have like the best success rate in the world, but humans
at least
are
you're tracking though. At least you're upfront about it.
Yeah, and humans are just so complex. Like, how can we possibly say that this template, like, let's just throw a shit ton of volume at you, and like, oh, if you're good enough, you'll survive it. Like, that's terrible. Like,
well, let's even take those 5 factors outside of fitness off the table for a second and say, even if you're just trying to do this with fitness, imagine the difference between selection, the Q course, SEER within that, and then doing their job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just completely different strategies that need to be put in place.
Yeah, I mean, the emotional attachment to an exercise, right? Like just having an emotion changes the stimulus to the nervous system. Like I hate deadlifts. You tell me to do deadlifts, long legs, short torso, like I suck at deadlifts. You can't possibly expect me to be like, yeah, hey, you want me to squat? I'll squat all day. But you tell me to do deadlifts, I'm already hyper stressed about it, and I already got to like prep myself up. So you can't tell me that humans can follow a template sustainably.
Yeah, exactly.
It's brutal, man. And that's just my own rant.
Well, I'm glad that you brought it up. But guys, we will see you next time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Oof.